And so and the granting donations. Oh, doesn't want to be with this? Okay. Yep. Yep. Me and I talked. Yep.
I would like to call this school district of Sturgeon Bay regular Board of Education meeting to order for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. Could we please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Meeks, can you do the roll call?
Commissioner Spritko?
Here.
Commissioner Schultz?
Here.
Commissioner Cruz? Here. Commissioner Stefani?
Here.
Commissioner Jennerjohn? Here. Commissioner Chisholm? Here. Commissioner Haas? Here. Commissioner Meyer? Here.
Excellent, excellent. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as presenting? Please note that we are going to be going into closed session under 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This probationary teacher performance, non-classified and administrative contract renewal, and mid-year performance evaluation of district administrator. And then we will return to open session.
I'll move to adopt the agenda, noting that we will go into closed session pursuant to 19.85 parent 1 parent C statutes, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Sub 9, probationary teacher performance. 10, non-classified and administrative contract renewal. And 11, mid-year performance evaluation of the district administrator.
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion by Commissioner Chisholm, seconded by Commissioner Cruz to adopt the agenda, noting going into closed session. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have public comments section. I don't believe we do. I don't see anyone here for that. Student council representative report also.
Exam week.
Exam week. We are here.
As
Everyone,
you know from your freshman son
I do.
experiencing that for the first time.
I do, so that's good. So that brings us down to the consent agenda, which consists of approving the meeting minutes, which is in your pack. Regular meeting of the school board meeting of December 18th of 2024, approving the December bills that are also in your package. And then accepting grants and donations for, we have a number of these here. So the first group I'm going to read are the Robert Nickel Auditorium Fund. We have the Hollinghead family for $500. Samara Phil Christian, excuse me, for $200. Mary Rosno for $100. Martha and Larry Burris for $100. There was an anonymous donation for $25. Dan and Sue Lelko for $100. Kathy Greer, $50. Cap and Mary Wolf, $2,000. Brad and Louise Andre for $500. Bob and Irene Gray, $500. James and Cynthia Flanagan, $500. Hagen Jim Meyer, $100. The Reichel family, $5,000. Richard and Janice Cohen for $100. Richard and Carrie Hauser, $500. Charlotte Schrader for $50. Jeff and Nancy Davis, $50. Catherine Smallin, $25. Wolf Brothers, $500. T. Meisner for $25. Deb Whitelaw Gorski, $25. Pat and Bob Sosinski, $50. Linda Robert, $200. Heath Lake of Door County, $500. Haley Lemke and Hope Hertz for $100. Nicola and Aaron Carmody for $100. Mary and Roy Aiken for $50. The Raybrook, donated, for the tech ed equipment grant. $199 for a Holland, Nels Charitable Fund for TJ Walker student, teacher, and or club support. $150 from Kelly, Swingen for the Pride program. $100 from Sue McLean to help families with meal expenses. $500 Haynesville Lutheran Church Women for families who can afford school meals. $33.60 Chuck Schomer for Clipper Clays. $513.99 from the Knights of Columbus for special education. A $50,000 anonymous donation to Clipper Clays Range Project. The Playground Fund, we have a $500 volunteer grant. We also have a Raybrook awarded a grant as well for that. I'd like to thank you to all these groups and individuals associated with them for their generosity to all of these topics. It's just fantastic to be able to, for me to trip over all these names. I'm sorry if I read anything wrong, but it's so wonderful to have so many names to read. We have resignations and retirements as well. Sue Guthrie is resigning from her associate position at Sunrise, and Julie Duchette is retiring from her speech language pathologist position. We have second special update on the UGG Egger second reading. This was covered a little bit in the last meeting. You can see A through F there. 0.6 annual notice of educational options as well. That is covered there as well. So a motion to adopt approve the consent agenda as presented is recommended.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Commissioner Generon, second by Commissioner Hawes to approve the consent agenda as presented. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have that approved. So now we are down to the operations point of the evening. And we are starting with approval of the open enrollment capacity, which we've talked about prior.
Absolutely, right. As the board knows from past years, heard again last month, admin team's been working on an updated approach to our open enrollment capacities for the next school year. Again, as the board also knows, school boards have a statutory obligation to act upon open enrollment capacity issue sometime in the month of January with their regular meeting. Going on to the next page of notes, for the 25-26 school year, we're recommending setting no limits on the regular education class enrollments, as you see on the grid, and I'll comment on that briefly in just a moment. On the special education services side of the thing, of kind of this grid, if you will, as well as speech and language services for next school year, we're recommending setting limits as presented on this one-page open enrollment document in the meeting packet. I'll just kind of point to the packet and then I'll do the usual reading of the final sentence there. Again, what we basically did, and thanks to Lindsay Ferry for all of us, I think she put 8 pages of information together with different scenarios based on current capacity, potential staffing approaches, student approaches, in and out, resident students, etc. And then what we did is we boiled that down and I took all her good information, the admin team talked about it a meeting or two, and then I tried to keep the format basically what we've looked at the last number of years. So we didn't completely take the board or any of our staff or public that look at this in a different direction. And that's where I came up with that, right? So we went by school, just like we've done before. So even though we're not recommending the setting of capacities of regular ed, based on what we've seen in recent years, you see, and I'll just use 1 or 2 of these as an example, right? I won't read the whole grid to you. You've seen this. At Sawyer, for example, we've got the 4K inclusion, the 5K, 4K 5 speech and language, then grade 1 inclusion with 2 scenarios, grade 2 inclusion with 2 scenarios, and then grade 1-2 speech and language. So backing up, the reason we came up with 2 numbers for some of those, the 4K examples, the top, so that's probably the easiest. We said, all right, if we have a standalone scenario with 4K on the special education side, we could accommodate 8 students through open enrollment. Of course, we have to accommodate as many resident students as would come in, as the board knows. However, as we talked about it, and again, Lindsay crunched numbers and talked with folks. If you see that 4K, if there's a split with 5K, so 4K, 5K work together, then instead of 8 open spaces, then there would be 5. We can't tell you exactly right now in, mid-January where we're gonna be at next September, but we try to allow for the flexibility, just like we've done with you in the past on the regular ed side, and say, hey, if a grade would have 3 sections, we have this much availability. If it ends up being 4 sections, that's much availability. So we use the same logic, same basic format, even though we're not recommending capacities with regular ed, just the special education, speech and language as presented there. As you get past Sawyer, you really see just one scenario per grade level to keep that pretty simple. And then as you jump down to the high school, when we have 9, 10, 11, and 12 with the different inclusion resource special education, the thinking was that we don't have a capacity issue there. Those students, especially that for the most part are typically higher functioning at the high school level. So we really aren't setting a limit within that, where those other limits are. So I'll go back to the notes and say, and then again, after the motions, we can answer questions, but a motion to approve establishing no regular education class limits for the 2025-2026 school year with the special education limits as presented is recommended.
I'll make a motion to approve establishing the regular education class limits for 2025-2026 school year with special education limits as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Hawes, second by Commissioner John to approve establishing no regular education class limits for the 2025-2026 school year with special education limits as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And now we're down to approving a high school track coach.
Yeah, we have one of an assistant high school track coach position here. Principal Nerby and athletic director Dupuy recommend Zach Elbers as a high school assistant track coach. As some of you know, Mr. Elbers currently teaches at the high school in tech ed and has helped with middle school track in the past. Motion to approve Zach Elbers as an assistant track coach at the high school level is recommended.
I move to approve Zach Elbers as an assistant track coach at the high school level.
Second.
Right. We have a motion by Commissioner Cruz and seconded by Commissioner Hawes to approve Zach Elbers as assistant track coach at the high school level. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now down to the April 2025 election update.
Yeah, we thought having an informational update on the topic was important and timely, as a couple of board members I know had reached out and making sure people were aware no action is going to be necessary on this. So as we know, board member Chisholm has provided her declaration of non-candidacy for the 2025 election. As a result, the board has a vacancy. Commissioner Stefani and Commissioner Schultz have filed their candidacy paperwork to run again. We received a declaration of candidacy paperwork from one candidate, Andrew Starr. So additionally, again, we'll have 3 board members running for 3 positions. And again, the board knows how this works, but for someone from the public, right, we have a 9-member board, meaning we have 3 folks who have a term that's up each April. Once in a while, as the board knows, we've had a 4th partial term, right? If someone had to resign and there was an appointment and so forth, but typically 3 3-year terms every year. The second paragraph was just my own brainchild because this popped up last year. And depending on the political climate, the next few months, it's possible this would happen again. So I'm just pointing out, and again, the board, you're well aware of this, but for the public, there is not an operational referendum scheduled to be on the ballot here in Sturgeon Bay. In recent years, other than, again, neighboring districts that are talking about their operational referenda, sometimes there are state level referenda questions. And then that generates interest. And I know in the last year or 2, we've had a couple, if someone had a red and white vote yes or vote no sign on one of the state referenda, sometimes that trips up one of our community members like, oh, is there a school referendum? I didn't realize no one told. And it's like, no, there isn't a school referendum. So Ann and I were talking, and I talked with President Stefani. I thought, again, the board, you already know this, but maybe just working a little paragraph into our update might be helpful. I know whether it's the League of Women Voters or other groups have reps that sometimes monitor our meetings and share the notes, so I wanted to cover that. So again, we know we don't have a school district referendum on the April ballot, but that wouldn't surprise me if we have one or more state level referenda, and I'm guessing none of you will be surprised by that either. So, President Stefani, that's all I have on this item, unless someone has a question.
All right, any questions? We move on. Good. Now we're down to Neola Board Policy Updates, volume 33, number 2, first reading. Remember, we had some last month. Now we're doing some
Different batches. We thank Mrs. Demise for helping us a lot through this, and different staff members, admin team members that help us work through these as well. All right, so I'll do my best to keep this moving. All right, so 5A, so we see policy 0164 version 2, really closed session virtual attendance. I'll jump right to that. Part of that is really what this deals with, and we know historically we have not done that sort of thing for different reasons, partially because we don't know who else could be seeing, in essence, the feed, right? Even if a board member attending remotely for closed session were to show like the room is empty, you never know if someone were to come in or be listening, maybe even without that board member's awareness. So we've avoided that. All right, B, policy 0174.1 is really a reference to the authorization of performance of clerk duties, right? We've done some different things with this to keep things moving. C, policy 2131, educational outcome goals and expectations. I'll jump down to about the third line where there's a reference in particular to Hmong Americans and Asian Americans here. Flipping to the next page, letter D. Policy 2340, district sponsored trips, right? This comes up from time to time. I'll jump into about the third line. Excuse me, transportation policy language from policy 8640 was added to this policy, and then 8640 basically is going to be rescinded and go away. Moving on, letter E, which is 3120.04 and 4120.04, employment of substitutes. There are revisions, in essence, that last sentence for a more comprehensive policy consistent with current demands. Letter F, policy 3120.08, employment of personnel for co-curricular and extracurricular activities, which is a revision. Basically, this provides some options for the hiring of personnel for co-curricular, extracurricular activity language. Letter G, 3431.44.31, employee leaves. This really clarifies instances where leave would be granted for employees who are subpoenaed to testify in matters regarding or related to their district employment. Next, letter H, policy 5200, attendance. In essence, we reviewed this as Ann and I looked at it, and we really didn't add some of those suggestions, except in the case of some of those severe weather situations. We kind of cover it, it's not really board policy, right? But I send out a superintendent letter each fall, typically the month of November. All the principals share that in their family newsletter, where I remind parents that, hey, you know, regardless of the day of the year or the weather, you always have the right, if you're concerned about safety out there or something going on, to keep your child home, just please let the office know. So that's kind of how we've handled it, but that's really what that deals with. Moving on, letter H, 5330, administration of medication or emergency care, really clarifies the who, how, and when non-prescription drugs can be provided. Again, an example like, I suppose, Tylenol, ibuprofen, etc. Letter J, policy 5430, class rank, right? Something the high school certainly deals with each year. In essence, we've had a process and do what has been described around the different Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship Program, et cetera. And now it's in writing in this policy as well. Policy 5460, graduation requirements. Again, what is described, we're already doing. The board knows it comes up once in a while. Of all the Neola template policies, probably the policy where we've written our own and made it the most unique is 5460 because of our graduation requirements going back probably to a rewrite Bob and I had done way back in the day. So that's enough with letter K, I think. L, policy 5505, academic honesty, a revision. And really, this is all about incorporating concerns regarding emergent AI technology and its impact on academic integrity. I know at my conferences, right, they don't go super in depth into what's happening with AI, but this whole, you know, academic honesty, integrity piece is, we're encouraged to remind our staff to work through this and work with teachers and parents, because we know the AI piece is going to continue to change and emerge over time. Letter M, Policy 5610, suspension and expulsion. Really, it's revised to include some language for the board to express a preference for non-inclusionary discipline. Again, we've had a process around like a pre-expulsion meeting with the superintendent, which may or may not mean the student ends up having to have an expulsion hearing. So there's some procedural things in the language that really we actually have been doing, but not for the purpose of, oh, you know, we wouldn't use expulsion if we feel it's not necessary, right? If we feel it's necessary, that it comes before you as a board. Thankfully, that doesn't happen super often, but we still would do that. All right, letter N, policy 5771, search and seizure. This really deals with how a student search may be directed by an administrator, right? Or really an appointed person other than a principal, right? Sometimes a principal has to be gone, or there's two different things going on at once, and there is a teacher leader who's received some training and has some leadership that can be involved with the proper way to handle a search. Letter O, policy 6423, use of credit cards. Really gets into some of the restrictions on district credit card usage as well as personal use of a credit card rewards program. I think we can probably all guess where that goes. They're just trying to keep this tight. Letter P, 7540.05, assistive technology and services. I think in general, rather than read that whole paragraph, right, assistive technology, usually helping students with different needs, right, is used in accordance with IEPs. And right, there is a situation where there can be a recording function that has been turned off, right? So a person can't just record something without proper need and proper permission. Letter Q, 7544, use of social media. We're going to outlaw social media in Northeast Wisconsin. Right? Oh, that it were that simple, many of us, not even as administrators, but parents, right? Even more so, I think that's been a nightmare. But anyway, back to our notes in all seriousness, right? To address the continuously evolving environment of social media and the potentially dangerous circumstances with school staff interact with students, right? Like we have apps. Some of you know, like the Hasia app, right? I use it as a parent, I use it as a coach, where there are ways through school, we can message with the group or a parent, or even like a student, like in our case, right? One of the girls on the team can send me a message where it's not necessarily a personal text message to my district number that I have, right, as your superintendent, but they can still get me a message if they're sick or something has come up, etc. So all of our other coaches and advisors can do the same. Letter R, policy 8395, student mental health services. This is revised to account for the delivery of mental health services using virtual platforms in addition to the traditional face-to-face on-site delivery. And again, we've seen this expand in recent years as well. Letter S, 8500, food services, really deals with streamlining dietary accommodations language, as well as a reference to the appointment of special dietary accommodations coordinator as required by regulations. And again, overall, you know, our director, Jenny Spooty, does a really nice job with our program. Letter T, 8510, wellness. This was updated to include Department of Ag's required non-discrimination statement, as well as a reminder that under the heading policy leadership, there was at least one choice that was required for compliance. Next up, kind of this grouping of U, V, and W. U, 8531, free reduced price meals. V, 8540, vending machines, and W, policy 8550, competitive food sales. These are really updated with regulatory and again, that non-discrimination type statement language. So we'll kind of group those three together in the interest of time. Next page, letter X, policy 8600, dealing with transportation. We see, again, dealing with the combination of policies, jumping down to Z, 8640, transportation for field and other district sponsored field trips. And then double A, referenced a little earlier, how there's the rescinding of a policy, how those all work together. I'll jump back up to letter Y, 8601, controlled substance and alcohol policy for employees that transport students. This is a new policy, not something we had utilized in the past. So there is a renumber, as well as we wanted to highlight it as new for us. Again, just dealing with transportation, right? We do have some situations where a staff member might drive a school van or a car or something. And so Ann and I felt that was appropriate to bring forward on behalf of the district. Jumping back down to the letter double B, policy 8660, transportation by private vehicle for district sponsored activities. Again, there's some options to better control what pops up with private transportation. And finally, letter C, 8680, transportation service contracts. I'll jump to the second sentence. Policy really is intended to cover transportation through contracts with a transportation provider. And again, we've contracted with Covisint for more than a decade. And so we work through some different things with them. So those are our first readings. They would come back on the consent agenda for a second reading next month. If someone thinks of something or noticed a little wording or typo, feel free to let us know, as you usually are great about doing. There we go.
Excellent. So that brings us down to reports. So. You wanna start?
Yeah, someone's, Principal Irby, you want to start walking our direction? I think as we often looked at the reports, right, President Stefani, right? Legislative, not a whole lot going on yet, although the state budget will pick up with time, right, the coming months. I think as Bill Kitchens has talked with us, some of my recent meetings and just being in contact, right, like the legislature just got back to session. So there's not a lot of things, right, that they've had happen. Joel has been named chair again of the education committee, right? So as far as having a local connection, someone's familiar with not only our community, but our school district, right? We have a bit of a tie there. As far as CISA and then committees and seminars, we know we have the education convention. We'll have some reps from the school board going down for at least a part of the week. Jake will be down there for the whole experience. Mrs. Demise is gonna take in her first school board convention. And then my hope, weather permitting, is to, as you know, pop down on Wednesday. We have games Tuesday and Thursday, and then come back Thursday afternoon. So I'm sure we'll all have some updates, or several of us will have updates on the seminars we go to when we talk at our February board retreat.
All right.
Principal Murphy, what do you have for us tonight?
As long as you're talking about basketball, proud to announce we have our coach for the next 3 seasons for girls' basketball. Did we confirm that?
We do not.
Oh, okay, all right.
About another month and a half.
All right. I just wanted to share that this week marks kind of the end of semester, the end of semester 1. So we're at that halfway point this year for the year. Students will be taking their exams tomorrow and Friday. They take blocks 1 and 2 exams tomorrow and 3 and 4 on Friday. For the high school, we have early release both days at 11:45. So just a reminder for our families. And then at the end of January, we'll be beginning the scheduling process already. So even though students just start semester 2, the scheduling process is such a big process that it takes so long. So students will start registering for classes for the next year towards the end of January. So they'll be doing that in the homeroom. Last month, you approved the course catalog. And so that was shared with families earlier this month in the newsletter for January. So they have that. I just want to encourage our families to review that, sit down and talk with your children about the scheduling process. It is a really big deal because we build the entire schedule around that. So we want people to take time, look through that, really think about what classes they want, because it's not super easy to change classes. And I can speak to that even as a parent myself, as I'm looking at what we want to do for my son, and as principal, it's not easy to switch classes. So it's just tough once that schedule's built. I also want to point out that we've had several positive stories. If you've seen the news at all, when we talk about the Robert Nickel Auditorium, you heard about some of the donations coming in. We've done a concerted effort. The mailings went out to families in December. And we've had some recent stories. So Door County Daily News was here to do a story on it. And then yesterday, if you watched NBC 26, they came down and did a story on it as well, which is great to try and build that momentum and get that project continuing to move forward. So we're excited to see that in our community. And I just want to remind everyone to finish the semester strong and start the new semester on a really high note when we come back on the 20th, when we start on the 20th. So that's what I got. Thanks.
Thanks. Smollen's coming around the corner.
Last week, we held our middle school choir concert. It was postponed due to weather. So it's just a lot of things happening here. We had our first dance team competition in Freedom. We had one there. 4th through 6th grade boys and girls played in local basketball games and area tournaments. And also, as we, that kicked off the start of January. This week, middle schools are taking semester exams like high schoolers, but a smaller version. Next week, they take their winter star test, followed by their spring math screeners. And then in late January, they take a youth risk behavior survey. That's like a state survey that they get to learn about that our county uses with United Way. Tomorrow, give you an idea, 14 seventh grade students are attending the Youth Leadership Conference, the Empower Youth Leadership Conference with the Green Bay Packers at the Resch Center. Over 800 middle schoolers will be there. We hope to roll these kids, help lead our other students at our building. 7th and 8th grade girls basketball plays their very first home game and their first game of the season tomorrow. And then also 34 middle schoolers have their first home wrestling competition. So to give you an idea, I remember when Coach Jacobson was hired like 6 years ago, we had 6 wrestlers, or 5 years ago, we had 6 wrestlers in the high school program. Like they're up to 31, middle school is up to 34, almost 35. And then finally, parents, please on your weekly newsletter, complete or take the building climate survey, helps us make decisions. And looking ahead with scheduling, January 28th is when the 8th graders are going to have their meeting with at 6 p.m. in the high school, and the incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th graders will be having it on February 3rd. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Smolin. Mrs. Smolin, Principal Smolin, come on in.
All right, well, we are wrapping up STAR testing for reading and math. So students are just 4th and 5th graders are wrapping that up. And so the 5th grade last week took them ice skating because we've got ice this year, which is so nice right across the street. And then 4th graders wrapped up today, and then their team took them ice skating. Many bruised knees, a lot of kids do not know how to ice skate, but they really loved it. A lot of smiles, it was great. And they had worked really hard on this testing. 3rd grade has more testing to do due to Act 20. And so they're still going. Celebration forthcoming. I don't know if ice skating will be it, because it is a lot. It is really intensive trying to help everybody to do that. Another opportunity that I just wanted to make you all aware of, I've been actively promoting. It's the Wait Until 8th pledge. And it's a pledge that allows parents to delay giving their children a smartphone until at least the end of 8th grade. There's just a lot of research about the negative effects on children, including, I could be here a long time talking about all of it, but most notably in the book, The Anxious Generation, it is like, it's affecting their relationships, their sleep, a lot less playing outside, their academics, the list goes on. And so the way it works is once more than if 10 families are active, if they sign it at a grade level, it becomes active, and then they connect the family. So our 4th grade team is active. I'm going to actually give a shout out to the 4th grade basketball coach, because he and his wife read this book and were like, we're in. We don't want any of them. And so he promoted. So the 4th grade, there's 10 active families. 3rd grade is almost there. We're like 2 families away. So I keep promoting it. And I want to note, it's specific to smartphones, not watches or flip phones, because that doesn't have the addictive quality of a smartphone. And so watches, because a lot of parents are like, I need to communicate. And I understand that, but we're seeing it as educators that this is really affecting kids as they move up. I see a lot of heads nodding. And so I'm just trying to get the word out on that. And so like less smartphones, more ice skating, just let kids be kids a little longer. And it affects, and academics too, of course, but we just want to see that. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Smolin.
Yeah.
I think some of the meetings I've been at recently and just talking with folks on the ice skating front, right? And just a little fun, good, clean entertainment, even if there's a few bruised knees, right? Because we've had the conditions after 2 years of very little, right? How many different kids and families have been spending some time outdoors at the ice rink is pretty cool, right? Different hours, some of us drive by and there's people over there. So kudos to the city and everyone involved with making that happen. Principal DeMillers, good evening.
Good evening. First off, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's been indoor recess for a couple of days at Sawyer Elementary School. And as part of that, it's been a little bit, kids have energy, right? And I think the staff and the students have done a good job to keep kids moving and safe and enjoying indoor recess. So looking forward to the last 2 days of the week when it's a little bit warmer. We have a triple parenting class coming up on January 28th. This topic is called balancing work and family, which I think everybody could use at some point in their lives. So I encourage parents or anyone out in the community that's interested to let us know and we can give you more information. We're also in the final stages of making a change to our morning routine. Usually the children come in, they put away their belongings. First and second grade go to one spot for about 20 minutes, depending when their kids drop them off. Kindergarten goes to another spot, 4K goes to their classroom. But we're going to try first and second grade, similar to what happens at Sunrise, having first and second grade have the choice of being outside, especially during the winter months. So they'll choose breakfast or outside, and we'll see how that goes. We're almost ready to implement that, and we're excited to see what that does for our students. We've had the advantage lately of having the Door County Therapy Dog Alliance started at our school. It's very exciting. They've come about 3 times so far. They come to spend time with our 4K and our kindergarten students during their reading special. And so they just sit, read along with kids, and it's been a very cool thing. We're excited to have them. I found out we were the only school around that hadn't had them. It took a while to get that going. So we're excited to have that. That's all I have.
Very good. From the Principal DeVillers.
Thank you.
I think we can all appreciate it. Looks like Director Weber's coming on down. If you see how bright it is in the evening, right? It was full moon on Monday. And I'm thinking, even as, you know, a former high school type person, full moon, indoor recess. Oh, bless those teachers. Director Weber, welcome.
Sure. I'm sorry that I have to follow ice skating and therapy dogs with cybersecurity, but there it is. So I just wanted to follow up really quickly with you all on a message you received, of course, on January 8th. It was our attempt in the IT department to just fill you in and help you to feel comfortable with the situation that we were unfortunately involved in. Power School, which is our student information system, experienced a breach. It was on their end. So the first thing I want to make sure is very clear is that nobody infiltrated our system. I like to think of the school district as having this bubble, this invisible bubble around it, and nobody got in. But we do send information to Power School, and Power School had a person who hacked into their system. So there are some specifics, but very generally, 2 tables were accessed. One was a student table and the other a staff table, and it was very specific to a range of years. So from 2004 to 2013, if you were a student or a staff member here, your credentials may have been obtained. Most of the information that was compromised is demographic information that can be found pretty easily on the internet. Unfortunately, some people had social security numbers tied to that. So Power School is assuring us that they have taken care of it and that they will provide us with support. So we are patiently waiting for them to do that. I'll talk more about that in a second. But again, they're assuring us that they have things handled on their end. We immediately sent out a couple different communications. One you saw, a second one we sent specifically to all of our current staff members as a courtesy, just to say, this is what's going on. If you hear something, we don't want anyone to panic. And then a third one went out, which you also probably received on Bright Arrow, and that was to everybody who's in our school messaging system, right? So it would have been all of you, all of our current families in the district. So right now we are waiting for further communication from Power School, and they're assuring us that they will be providing resources and support in the way of credit monitoring and identity protection. So we were expecting to see that, of course, before now, but they assure us that it is coming. So if you have any questions for me, I will try to answer them, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone felt updated on that.
One note I would add, when we have a situation a little different than this and we're communicating directly with staff and families about maybe a safety incident or something that occurred, we wouldn't normally use the social media pages for that, right? Because it just opens outside people to know stuff they don't need to know, start commenting and all that nonsense. This was an example because really our tech team was kind of like, we're reading between the lines on what may have been involved, even though there's certain stuff we're still waiting on. And it was kind of like, oh, if we use Spencer to push that out, hey, then the school community is kind of aware if they see there was some sort of breach on the news, what happened, as well as maybe a former teacher or alums, that aren't in school anymore, that wouldn't get our internal communication like, hey, something's going on here. Especially because again, that window that Jen touched on from about 04 to 2013, some scattered stuff within there. So that's why we did use that. So that is something we talked about in that back room where I'm like, normally we wouldn't, but I do think it's a good idea. In this case, they did as well. Spencer made sure to push that out. So just so you're aware that that was kind of unique.
It was on the news, it was,
Oh, yeah.
on news websites already, and we were named as a district, so we felt it was best to try to just give as much information as we could at the time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, yes.
You. Nothing.
Director Ferry is yielding her time for another day. All right. Jake, you want to go ahead?
I emailed a couple hours ago, the little second updates, in front of you, with year-end projections. You can take a look at that. The tax issue, I think, will not 100% resolved. We have the answers. We feel confident that I don't need to chase anything anymore. Basically, there was an issue where residents of the district that live in the town of Sevastopol were paying a higher mill rate than those in the city, and that I communicated to you. What happened was there were a number of timelines on certifications of various property value assessments. For the school districts to try and fairly spread out our tax levy, we use equalized value. You see that in the top right corner of your tax bill. It's also called fair market value. And that is certified by early September. What happened in the town is similar to what happened in the city back in 2020, is there was a property reassessment. You can ask President Stefani all about that. But when that happens, there's a deeper dive into the properties. It takes a little bit longer. So whereas the city and most municipalities across the state certified their property assessments just via mathematical increases for property values back in June or July, because of the reassessment, the town of Sevastopol did not get to update or did not update theirs until September 26th. And then they had certified that by their deadline of October 1st. And so we had two different numbers. Somehow both of them correct. Although one of them technically an estimate. And that's the one that was used to distribute the tax levy. And so that is how those in the town of Sevastopol ended up paying a higher tax rate. The remedy is next year that will be adjusted. So my understanding is that same 45 cents extra per $1,000 of property value that those in the town are paying should be 45 cents less next year. I think the lone question I need to ask yet is, okay, who needs to initiate that remedy? Does the Department of Revenue just do that, or do I need to file a grievance? And so that's where that's at. I learned something new, not fun, but it's not uncommon across the state. Our friends in Amro are actually going through the same thing right now. Editorially, the different deadlines don't make sense to me. I have a hard time understanding how we can have our student numbers submitted after October 1st, and we get the big equalization aid that goes through all these equations by October 15th. But I digress. that's out of our hands, and there will be a remedy next year. Not perfect, but it's better than nothing, so.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
So then that would be for 1 year to rectify the 45 cents per thousand that was overcharged in essence this year. And then the following year, it'll go back.
As long as there's not a reassessment. And to detail that a little bit. So I think in my first update, I said our total mill rate should have been an even 744 or 745 across the board. It's not like the citizens, right? So 7 cents more than the 738. So it's not like the citizens in the city that are part of our district are gonna now pay 45 cents more. It's gonna be spread out over all the properties in the city. And I think that's what made it a little bit more unique in our situation is there's just such a small portion that's in the town that it increased so much. It does appear that this actually happened in 2020 when the city did their reassessment. The difference was 3 cents though. So I don't know, like I told Dan earlier today, I don't know that we would have chased that at all. Nobody brought it up. I don't know that anybody would have. We would have said 3 cents is a decent margin of error. So. Yeah.
Bottom line, it's more complicated than it should be.
Yeah.
Even when all the different parties try to do everything right and follow the right timeline. You mentioned, a friend of mine is the superintendent at Amro. They have 11 municipalities. 10 of the municipalities, everything matches perfectly, just like ours did with the city. One municipality, that happened to go through a reassessment, is dealing with exactly this issue. Right, where it's like, wait a minute, right, there's a realtor, just people are trying to get to the bottom of it, Department of Revenue. Helpful to a point, maybe not helpful to another point, just off to the side based on what they're telling me, so it is interesting. We'll leave it at that, I think, for now, unless someone has a question. Anything else you want to touch on? Why is that?
That's what I've been working on.
Indeed you have, we've seen, at least some of us have seen the email.
Many emails. Thanks for doing what you did. I guess the only commenter, you'll be on it even after this because we just have to make sure that there is that adjustment next year because it does add up for people.
For sure.
Thanks.
Maybe just, I don't remember the specific numbers, we've seen a couple, but when you think of like the total, like the pie, the city is roughly 85% of that pie, give or take, right, when it comes to the district dollars. And some of the town of Sebastopol residents in our district, right, are roughly 15%, give or take, just to kind of give you an idea. That's why it can be, like for Mike and other towns of Sebastopol, right, it can be that higher number of cents. But by the time that's divided over the city residents, that's where it's more along those, 6-7 cents type thing. So that's kind of how that works that way. At a high level.
So next time there's assessment, we almost need to be kind of aware that that's happening, so.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I learned is there could have been because what happened was in August, right? Town of Sebastopol said, hey, here's our total, right, what do we expect about our total assessment to be? And they applied the same percent, Dan just talked about the percent that's in our district, they applied that same one from last year to that estimate. Except it changed, which looking at some timelines. Not pointing any fingers, but there was probably some signs that there was gonna be a change. And so what happened was, right, the town of Sebastopol had this big increase and those in the school district of Sebastopol. Those properties increased at a faster rate, so their portion of the town of Sebastopol, right, got bigger than our portion. And so that's where that splits of that estimated split caused the issue.
Always something new to learn about.
Yeah.
On my report, I'll bypass the first section. Second one, community engagement, I'll have a note for you. I'll do, right, admin team splits up the WDOR shows. I'll take the January 28th show, right? Rather than send the same person all the time, a little variety is nice for those listeners who, of course, follow that. In the finance facilities and operations section, I will say the rec facility, we did have our steering committee meeting yesterday. I don't have a formal report to share with you yet, but where we had a nice turnout right before Christmas with folks coming out about the outdoor and then somewhere in the county indoor, right? Two very different pieces. And I think overall, at least the people the city has heard from before or since or that night, you know, we're saying not only is there some support, there's probably an expectation from some folks that after all this time, something with the track, some sort of turf field probably in the middle. Right, getting to be critical mass, right? We know the city has some seed money, so basically, the consultants should be bringing forward, right, a feasibility study, right, pulling some of the different pieces together. There's an option of the different options that seems to be preferred so far, and then the way Josh Van Leeshout and I have tried to talk with folks, and again, Mike's been in on that, is kind of phasing that, knowing probably not going to have the funds for it all at once, and probably the first phase, at least our preference would be, the city so far seems on board with that, like the track field in the middle piece. So continuing to move, we're not there yet. But I think there's some pieces, and I've had other people tell me this too, have been around town longer than me. Like we're getting to a point with a master plan, some things where, you know, there's maybe some hope and some different things that go beyond what we've had before. So we'll see what happens, but I will keep you posted when I have more to share. Next item. If anyone from the board is interested, so on Monday, February 3rd, right after school, we'll have our annual compensation review meeting, where we have usually 2 or 3 board reps, Jake and me, and then we have some teacher reps from each of the school, right? We don't have an active union in the district, right? So it's not that type of thing, but when we talk through some different issues, the board knows, right? We work through a lot of different things, post-employment, PTO, longevity, a bunch of things we've worked through over time. And now we're getting to a point of dialing in, really probably focusing on the salary ladder for a few years. So again, Monday, February 3rd, right after school, we usually run from about 3:30 to 5. If a board member, and again, Mike and Tina have seen this before as board leaders, but if we have another board member or two that would be willing to sit in on that, let me know. Or again, Mike or Tina have been in there before. They can kind of tell you what it's like. It's informal, good dialogue. It's been a positive thing for our district over the time I've been here as we've had to redo that comp stuff. My note in here, open enrollment says no updates yet. I have now received, since I originally wrote this report from Bill Foster, so we'll probably share that or do something with it at the board retreat. All right. Again, nothing super enlightening or new, but you know, I think it was 51 or 53 or 57, whatever it was, responses that they were able to get some feedback from some folks. So we'll want to take a look at that. And then the last item from the list I had, the communication planning update, Brian Nickel from the Donovan Group and I have talked. The thinking is he will probably come talk with the admin team and me at the end of the month, Wednesday morning, January 29th at like 10:30 a.m. We'll work through 4 questions and then we'll get the kind of his little report, you know, roughly he thought maybe even 85% give or take drafted. And then I will bring that to our board retreat. So we can spend some time and you have input, but we don't need so much time, right? Where you're sitting there starting with the blank template. That's probably not a good use of your time. All right. So we're moving that along. And then the last item I added was just yesterday, we've all seen in the news, right? Different things with the most updated Title IX stuff that we talked about last summer and fall, right? In essence, being vacated. So really, I'll just read part of this because I know there are some folks in the community that are very interested in the topic. So really on Monday, we've got the first of what will likely be a number of emails from different legal firms and so forth about the federal court in Kentucky that set aside the 2024 Title IX regulations nationwide on January the 9th, 2025. As of Monday afternoon, when I had typed up this report, we had not received an email from Neola. We have now received an email from Neola. I think it was just this afternoon. I didn't get a chance to read it because it came in during practice. So they've been in contact. So I'll give you more updates on that without belaboring the point. And then maybe just some people find it interesting. How does this work? I think I pulled together one more sentence, maybe 2. While previous federal court decisions communicated to us earlier this school year Those dealt largely with the Department of Ed being prohibited from enforcing the 2024 Title IX regulations. This most recent action says they, and I even quoted from one of the emails, must be set aside by a vacator order under the Administrative Procedure Act. Again, of the several emails we got, I used the one from Belo, Vetter, and Bakima, Olson, and Delete. One of the attorneys, Mary Gerbic, someone we've used for a while for special ed personnel. So not to bore you with that, but yeah, I thought it was appropriate to add a note since, those are coming in quickly, that those are set aside. Again, I'll read the Neola one before I comment more on where that's going. So we knew that that was likely depending on how the election would play out, and now we really know. I know we have closed session tonight, so I think I'll stop right there.
All right, so that ends the report section. So we do need to make a motion to go into closed session, and this is we need a roll call vote on this, but we need to make the motion first. So do we, can someone make a motion to go into closed session?
How about to go into closed session per 1985-1C? Considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee for which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. One, probability teacher performance, probationary teacher performance. Two, non-classified and administrative contract renewal. And three, mid-year performance evaluation or district administrator. And we will return on session.
We have a second? Second. We have Commissioner Jernigan, second by Commissioner Haas, to go into closed session. Due to 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. 0.9 probationary teacher performance, 10 non-classified and administrative contract renewal, and 11 mid-year performance evaluation of district administrator. Then we will return to open session. Do we have further questions? Hearing none, if we can have a roll call vote, Ms. Denise?
Commissioner Spritka,
Yes.
Commissioner Schultz,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Haas,
Yes.
Commissioner Chisholm,
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Stefani.
Yes. All right.